Hey, today on No Gray Areas, we have former NFL player Seth McKinney, and he tells his story and gives us principles about how to overcome disappointments and how to succeed in the processes of life. Listen now. Seth McKinney, thank you so much for joining us on the No Gray Areas podcast today. I'm really excited about our interview, so I want to just jump right into it. I'm going to probably embarrass you a little bit because I want to read a list of your accomplishments. And audience, bear with me because it's a pretty long list. You played football at high school, at a high level in high school and college, and you actually made it into the pros as well and played at a high level there. So in high school, you won a state championship. Is that correct? In Texas.
That is correct, which is a huge deal in Texas. And
It is.
And my claim to fame on that one is I played with Drew Brees.
Yeah. So did he help win that championship, I'm assuming?
Yeah, he certainly did, obviously. I mean, it wasn't because of my blocking that we won, I know.
Yeah.
But we would have won the year before, but he got hurt in the game before, or 2 games before state. We unfortunately lost the game right after. But we were on a roll.
Wow. So I bet that was fun for you to watch him, though, and how well he did in his career, especially since you played with him in high school.
Yeah, I mean, you're in it so much and you see him play. And even in high school, I did my best. And I don't blame A&M at all for, passing. And frankly, every school in Texas passed on Drew. But I did my best to recruit him and to get the coaches to look at him, and they did, but it just didn't work out. And, I always joke around that you could not have planned it better for Drew. Frankly, he went to Joe Tiller at Purdue, and it was like a PhD in passing versus coming to A&M where we might have thrown it, 13 times a game. And
Yeah.
it was like a associate's degree in passing there. So it worked out great for Drew.
Okay. Yeah. So it worked out for him for sure. So you win a state championship in high school, then you go play for Texas A&M, and you start 50 consecutive games, which I think at least a few years ago was the second most ever in Texas A&M's history. So, and anybody that knows the game of football knows that is unbelievable to play, especially as a lineman, to play 50 consecutive games. You end up as academic All-American, Scholar Athlete of the Year, 2-time Offensive Lineman of the Year, Offensive MVP, team captain, second team All-American, member of the All Big 12 10-year anniversary team, Texas UIL All-Century team for high school. So that is a list of accomplishments. And then in 2002, you get drafted by the Miami Dolphins. And I think the next 3 years, you play all 16 games?
Well, no, I didn't start. Yes, I was basically the way they do their stats is was on the active roster for all those. Yes, my first year I didn't start, but I did do the worst position of all time, which is wedge captain on kickoff return, which is sheer misery. I'm a lineman. I'm not wanting to be out there at all. No one wants to be wedge captain. There's no one on earth I met that was psyched up to be wedge captain. But I'll tell you what, the guy you're blocking is psyched up to be in his position. Those attackers or whatever, I can't you number them all 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 as the kicker goes.
Yeah.
And it was the fives that were the craziest people on earth, and that was who we had to block. And it could be a linebacker, it could be a fullback, and that's their job. Their sole job in life is to kill me and the guy that doesn't want to be there. And
so they're running down the field full on and just wanting to hurt you. Yeah.
Yeah. You go in there, you lay into them. And I remember one time in Kansas City, the kid went to Kansas State. I can't remember his name, but just coming downhill linebacker, and I was like, when you hit, it's like you're startled. And I didn't have a concussion or anything, or it might be in today's term, seeing stars. But I know that I came off to the sideline and my helmet was dented at the top. The face mask was. I was like, wow, I just did a systems check, and I was like, yeah, I can feel everything. I'm alive. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, listeners that maybe didn't play football, and especially at the level that you made, they don't realize, like, you guys were in, we might call it like small car accidents numerous times a game. As big as fast as you guys are at that level now. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean it's quite a sport. There's, despite what they've done, and they've made a lot of changes, advancement, and helmet technology, and much less rule changes. But as far as it comes to linemen and things of that nature, I mean, it's you can't you can't change what you did down there. Granted, we were just like you'd have the collisions, you have big collisions every play, but you don't have those wicked hits that receivers or quarterbacks have from time to time.
Well, how many years did you play for Miami then? You were
I
drafted by
played
the
five
Dolphins.
years.
Okay.
The second year, I competed to start, and 3 through 5, I was in the starting position, even though the injuries headed up at that point in time. And then my sixth and seventh years, I was in Cleveland, and then my eighth year, I was in Buffalo.
Okay. Well, I want to get around to this because this podcast is about the power of choices and the consequences of choices, good and bad. And I think that your life, not just in sports, but just because you're a human being, you've dealt with disappointment. I mean, when I was reading those stats about you and thinking like, here, you go all the way through college and you hit 50 consecutive games, and then you're at least able to play in 16 games in your first 2 or 3 years of the NFL, but then the injuries start hitting. And I'm assuming at that point in your life, like football's life for you almost, right? I mean, you to make it to that level, you spent quite a bit of time on that field.
It was definitely my livelihood, uh, and my family was depending on me. And not only that, I mean, you're out there, you're a competitive person, and you want to be on the field and competing with your teammates and competing for yourself to prove yourself that you deserve to be where you're at. And that's what I always say is that professional sports, football, whatever it's the ultimate meritocracy. I mean, it's no one is out there choosing favorites. If you're the best, you're going to be playing, and if you're not going to play. And that's just how it goes. And at every turn, as a player, you're out there trying to prove it every play. And if you're not, you're taking steps back, and you're going to get worse, and you're never going to make it long term. But you have to know that, and that's something that just starting day one that you have to take into consideration, even in college or whatever. College is pride and getting out there and that desire to make it to the next level, and that's how you prove it, right? These kids nowadays, it's an interesting situation, but you got the NIL and all that. Well, I don't want to get into that, but the motivations have changed, I guess, a little bit, but it's
Yeah,
still the
yeah,
same. The best players get the NIL, and they take it from there. But yeah, I mean, it's your life. You're spending uh, waking hours doing it, and you get off like at 5 or whatever, 6, and that's your deal. But your whole life is football instead of
yeah.
doing books as an accountant.
Seth, though, you bring up a really good point that I don't think a lot of people think about. Unlike most jobs that people have, because when you were playing, it's your job, like you said, it's your livelihood. But you are 100% dealing with the best get on the field. And it's like you didn't have a good day at work in the office. Well, you go back in, you still got your job the next day. You're really dealing with in the high level of sports world that you could lose that job the next day.
Yeah, I had
So the pressure's got to be amazing.
yeah, it is. It's stressful, and anyone who tells you that it's not is lying. Even the best are stressed about their performance, either for pride's sake. The best don't necessarily worry about making the team, but they're worried about being the best, right? And so it's a different level of stress, but there's always stress on it. And you're constantly everything you do is on film, every little step, every interaction. I mean, it's on film, and it's the wildest thing. But you could compare it, going back to an accountant, is having what you do filmed, everything, like, oh, that was an error in that Excel cell you have there, or you know what I mean. It's like everything is judged and to the T's,
Yeah,
and it's the ultimate competition.
yeah.
And I loved it. I love my time doing it, but yeah, it was indeed stressful. But I had a strength, going back to it. I had a strength coach tell me one time, Brad Roll, he was like, he's like, you guys, you football players are the most insecure people of all time. And I was like, yeah, it is. It is a bad feeling that knowing that every day, your performance is how you're judged, and whether you stay out there or not. And it's not like being an accountant, a doctor, or, any kind of profession. You get paid like a doctor, but once you're done, you don't still make doctor money. You got to start over. And so your whole goal is to stay there as long as you can and to do the things that you have to do to not only win and be the best at your position for the team and your pride and things of that nature,
Yeah.
but, so you can make money and support your family.
Well, so you had a pretty illustrious career. So what was one of your highest points and lowest points? And I'm asking this because I'm interested. I'm asking high point from high school, college, and professional, and low point in those. So your high point might have been high school. I don't know. Will you tell me?
There's so many things I could point at. I would say one of the coolest things that I ever did was win the Big 12 championship in 1998. The way we won it was just so unbelievable. It was a double overtime game versus Kansas State in the Big 12 championship. And, if they would have won the game, they were going to the national championship game. And, we ended up winning on a last second play in double overtime, and it was a crazy occasion. But that was definitely the most fun
Wow. Yeah.
thing that I've ever been through. It was unreal. It was a blast. And another high point for me, and this is, I guess you're getting to my low point, if you will. But another high point was just kind of I missed my fifth year with a neck injury that I had a C6 C7 fusion, got that taken care of, earned the ability to start again in Cleveland, and then so this gets to the low point is like in the ninth game versus Seattle. I dislocated my left shoulder, and it was such a demoralizing thing. I mean, it really hurt me, man. I mean, it like emotionally took me down, and that's tough because I mean, I dealt with a lot. I'd had three injuries before that, missed the whole entire season of my fifth year, come back, earned the ability to start again. We were having a great year. It was the best year in Cleveland in years. We actually went 10-6 that year, had a ton of Pro Bowlers. But and then getting hurt, I can remember just like I didn't want to think about anything, man. I just like it was rough. It was really, really rough. And of course, I came back and earned the right to play for another 2 years. But after all of that and proving myself and earning the right to start again, to get hurt just in the ninth year was like, here we
Yeah.
go again. And but
Yeah.
that's getting back to it. It's like fighting through and you ask the low points that you come back from. Is that what are you going to do? I mean, you could either wallow in your pain and misery and depression, if you will, or you can say, no, forget it, man. I'm going to prove myself that I can still play in this league and that I have the ability to play, and I'm going to do it. And you take it day by day by day. I can remember starting the rehab up. You're barely moving your arm, just kind of doing little bitty rotations, and then you take it from there. And
Yeah.
year
Yeah.
7, I go out for 2 days and training camp and prove myself again. So that's all you can do is just take it day by day
Yeah.
and keep earning the right to be out there.
Seth, though, when you're telling that story, it made me think again. For all of us as humans, we deal with disappointment, but one of the things that you were going through and the discouragement, maybe the depression that you were going through at that time is you worked, it sounds to me like you worked really hard to come back from injury and then boom, you get hit again. But you don't know the future in that moment, right? Like right now you're sitting there and you look back and you realize
Yeah.
you came back from that injury again. But that's what makes disappointment so difficult in our lives sometimes is we actually don't know the future. Like at that moment when you're hurt again, you're like, this could be it. This could be the end. And
You're
that's what
right.
makes it
You're right. I
difficult,
mean,
right?
at every occasion and every injury, you could always you can think the worst and things of that nature. And frankly, I probably did think the worst that I'll never do it again. But you can't keep that thought, right? You can have that thought. That's fine. I mean, those kind of thoughts happen naturally. You're a human being. But the thing that you've got to do is to fight that all away, put it away, and just go through the process. I mean, like I played under Nick Saban for 2 years in Miami, his 2 years in the NFL, and one thing that he did always preach was the process, and
Hmm.
that's all that you can think about. Like you control the process. That's the only thing in life that you can control. is doing the right things that you need to do, whether that's be the best football player, be the best father, be the best, business owner, things of that nature. And there are certain processes that are involved in all those. And when it comes to football and rehab, is you go through the process. You start with the barely moving your arm, and then you start with, shoulder perturbations or whatnot. And then you take it into doing, bench again, and you take it into actually going on the field and hitting somebody. And that's all you can do. That's all you can control is yourself. And I know it's a lot easier said than done, but it's that,
Yeah.
stoic mentality that, hey, you literally only control what you control. And I try to tell my kids that, but it's a hard principle to, get through to somebody is that that's the only thing that you can do in life is control yourself because
Yeah. Yeah.
I think if you're married, you know that you have no control over your wife as much as you love
Yes.
her. She's going to do
Yeah.
what she's going to do, and you can only do
Yes,
what you
that's
can
true.
do.
That's
And
true.
so that's what it comes down to is you doing what you're supposed to do to be the father, player, whatever it is that you're doing in life. That's how you live. Is that you just keep doing the process day by
Yeah.
day. You wake up, you do the same. Well, you don't do the same. You try to find if you messed up, you fix it and move on. But that's all you can do is keep following the process. And when you mess up, pick up the pieces and move forward.
That is so good because you said it sounds simple, but and it does. I think sometimes the deepest truths are the
Sure, it
simplest truths,
sounds simple.
right? Yeah, but it's not. But I love that because one of my biggest pet peeves is that in our culture, it seems like we're incessant in trying to somehow identify or pretend that there's these overnight successes. Like someone all of a sudden makes it big and we're like, oh, look at it. It was overnight. It's never
Right.
overnight, is it? If you look back, anything, anybody, any organization, any team that's been successful, if you're going to look back, you're going to see a process, right? You're going to see these little steps that were taken again and again and again.
So I go back to Saban again, and I know that I keep saying this because first off, he's at Alabama. I'm an A&M guy, so I despise him. And I played for him, so I
Yes.
look. Here's the deal. I respect him as a coach, and I don't think that he was out there to be our friends. Period. Full stop. He was not out there to be your friend. He was out there to win at that time Super Bowls, and I think you can say the same thing about him in Alabama. But I will say this: when I say that I respect him as a coach, is that he was relentless, and there's a reason that he is literally the best that's ever breathed when it comes to college football. Is that he he does. He like when you say that there's a process, he follows it. When it comes to recruiting, when it comes to coaching, when it comes to holding his players accountable, when it comes to holding his own coaches accountable, he will not hesitate to chew out one of his coaches. I remember Hudson Houck, who was like one of the greatest offensive line coaches of all time, uh, telling us in a meeting one time, he's like, "Look, when y'all mess up, just know that I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna ream y'all because guess who's getting it upstairs? Me. I'm getting
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
getting chewed out, so I'm gonna chew y'all out. Trust me." So like you're talking about a guy that's coached the best of the best and has been around in the league, you know, 5 times, 10 times longer than Nick Saban ever thought about being in the league, and he was there and
Yeah.
getting chewed out and having to hold us accountable. So it's a process. It's a daily grind, but when it comes to being the best, Saban does it. And he has that ability. And that's why that I don't, I don't look at myself as a negative that I will never have that because there are certain aspects of your life that you have to give up to be that. And he has. He's fully devoted to being the best football coach that has ever lived. And he'll probably achieve that, but at the detriment of what I don't know. And I'm not going to say or speculate on anything else. But I
Yeah.
do know what it takes to be the best. And I look at myself, I'm like, man,
Yeah.
I don't have to be the best. I don't know if I want to do that. But there's a reason he's where he is.
Yeah. Well, I love to say that sacrifice is giving up something you love for something you love more. And again, if you
Yeah,
see anybody
yeah.
who's accomplished something, they've sacrificed. And what I hear you saying is he's sacrificed a lot of things
Yeah,
that he probably loved to get to something that he loved more.
no
And
doubt.
Seth, I think I just want to stay on this point for one more moment because I think it's so important for our audience to get, again, where you're talking about processes, because it is a secret ingredient in life. It's you show me any great father and they didn't stumble on that accidentally. Show me a great accountant, they didn't stumble on that accidentally. Show me a great doctor, they didn't stumble on that accidentally, right? And that's what you're saying you learned from Saban, is it's going back to the process. And even dealing with your disappointment with injuries, it's getting up the next day and moving your arm just this little bit and doing the PT just a little, right? It's that
Right.
process. And you found that in your professional life now, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what you do. There is a process, and you can define it. I know I'm saying process a lot, but I mean try. Yeah. Anyways, it's what it's all about. There's a process of life. There's a process of being, a great father, and you do the best that you can to follow it every day. When you
Yeah.
wake up, when it comes to being a husband, things of that nature, or whatever it is that you're doing in life, and you
Yeah.
can say that about real estate or anything else. There's a process on what you do, and those that stick to it. First off, you have to find the right process. You can't find If you find the wrong process, you're going to get the wrong process results. And when you find the right process and you follow it over and over, and you're constantly even changing the process and making it better, and things that and adapting to the new current reality of what things are, that as long as you're on the path and following the right steps, that you're destined to be a success. But
Yeah.
and I think Annie Duke, and some of her books, if you know, she's that great poker player,
Yep.
talks about
Yep.
resulting, and I think about things that when people talk about a failure, or a one time success, and they don't talk about the steps that were taken to get to that, and they're resulting.
Absolutely.
And I like, look, I know what I am in golf. I am a horrible golfer. I love it. It's a lot of fun. I go out and I play it. It's kind of just thoughtless, and I actually enjoy playing golf by myself quite a bit. On the
Yeah.
course where I play, I can get out there and go, and just it's kind of mindless, and you're just hitting balls. But when you're playing with someone, I'm like, hey man, you made great contact, dude. That's like all you can ask for. You just something else messed up. I was like, you're resulting. You're not gonna be perfect. No one takes the time in golf to be the best, especially amateurs. It just takes
Yeah.
too much.
Yep.
But
Exactly.
but if you're even like on real estate, if you have a deal that you bought and you made a lot of money in it or whatever, and you don't know what you did to do that, or don't try to replicate that, you're just resulting. But if you can go in and consistently say, this is what I did to get this, and we did this, and we did this, and we did this, and ultimately made money. I mean, that's where it comes down to.
Yep. Absolutely. I remember at about 18 years old, I'm 52, almost 52 now. So that's a long time ago, 18 years old. But I decided I was going to read 30 minutes a day. And I think I think I've done that pretty much my entire life. At 20, 21, 22, it really hadn't started showing up that much, like the impact that would have. 25, 26, 27. But you start doing that, and that's where really when I got into my 40s is where I started to realize that this little habit of reading 30 minutes a day had started to build and was now having huge implications on my life. But it didn't happen overnight. It didn't even happen in a few years. It was after years and years and years of doing that. I think that's the process piece. Well, let me ask you this, because we talked a lot about process. You mentioned Saban at Alabama, or from Miami at that time, is the one who taught you that. What is something else that a coach told you, or one of the most important things that a coach ever told you that helps you in life?
I think going back to RC Slocum at A&M, my coach there, who I loved and loved playing for, was always talking about, you know, academics and things of that nature. And he would always make that a big deal, even though some people didn't take it seriously or some did. I ended up taking it seriously, and I tried my best to make good grades. I went to class, and I know that there are plenty of people who never went, but I just did it. I just showed. That was basically like the process. I didn't have to go crazy. I didn't make all A's or whatnot. I made a lot of A's because I did show up and I did study. And
Yeah.
but I had a buddy that would just drive me nuts because he's like, had a photographic memory or whatnot. And anyway, that's a different story. But but I did have the process of at least going to class and studying. I mean, I wasn't the best student on earth, but I did it. I showed up, and Coach Slocum would always be just like, have the. One time he brought in Greg Hill, a former player of his, and I remember after practice he was like, the smartest people have two plans, and I was like, I take that to heart, and I ended up getting my master's degree while I was at A&M, undergrad and master's. So I did take my education very seriously, and I attribute a lot of that to Coach Slocum kind of beating that
Yeah.
into us.
Yeah.
That was a big part of his program.
Yeah. So he said the smartest people have two plans.
Yeah,
That's
I see
good.
both sides of that. I recently came across there's a person I like respect on Twitter, and I follow her newsletter, Dr. Julie Gerner. Um, anyway, sometimes she's on the opposite side of that, of like burn the bridges, and I get it, but I think that especially while you're young, you can go down two paths. Like I was like, there's just too many unknowns when it comes to football to like, I think that would just be completely ignorant to only focus on football at the expense of getting an education while you can. I could have done that, but who knows if I didn't play 50 straight games in college and had a shoulder or whatnot in college and didn't get drafted or something
Yep.
of that nature, So you have to make great decisions for where you're at in life. And that just wasn't for me to only pick football. I mean, a lot of people do that, and sometimes it pays off, and more
Yeah.
often than not, it does not pay off.
Yeah. Well, I think, Seth, that you bring up a point there where there's so many dichotomies in life, isn't there? If I could write a book, I think I would talk about the dichotomies in life, because both those two principles are very true. That if you're smart, you're going to have two plans. And then the dichotomy is burn the bridges, burn the ships,
Yeah.
go all in. Both are good
I think
principles.
what that comes down to is like having doubt or self-doubt, though, more than
I do
having
too.
two paths,
Yep, that's what you're saying is you're thankful that a coach brought in someone who taught you that, and that you were going down two plans, that you definitely had the football one that worked out for you for a while, but because you had a second plan, it's worked out well for you post-football years.
Yeah, and if you're not thinking about your life after football when you're playing, then you're in for a world of hurt, in my opinion. It doesn't last forever, and like I said, you're getting doctor, lawyer, whatever money for 8 years.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think the average career is like 3 years. So
Wow.
you've got to understand that there comes an end to the music. It does shut off at some point in time, and you have to gather yourself, regroup, and figure out a way to support your family.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. And if
Yep.
you don't have that plan, you better be very, very good at football.
Yeah.
Because some people can do that. Some people have the ability to. And I never wanted to have only football. I think that. I mean, there are guys that can do it, right? That have the ability to only do football. I admit that fully. But like I said, the vast majority of players out there are going to be dependent on something other than what they made while playing when they get done.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking a tiny, tiny minority of players,
especially when it comes. Especially if you talk about take it down to the college level, that percentage is minuscule. I mean, probably 0.01% can rely on what they made in the NFL for the rest of their life.
Yeah. And then even once they get done, even if they play a long career, then what are they going to do after that? Well, there's a very, very few of them that still get to go into sports broadcasting or something where they're still in the football world.
Right.
But very few. That's
right.
Very few. Well, Seth, thanks so much, man. I think we definitely learned some life principles, power of choices, how to overcome disappointment. I think you gave us some principles that are valuable that you learned from some of your coaches. But I want to finish with something that we do that's really fun and no gray areas. It's ironic because I'm going to ask you to lie to us. So audience has heard you for about 30 minutes here. And see if you can stump me and the audience. 2 truths and a lie.
All right. 2 truths and a lie. I work out every day at 6 a.m. I was hit by a car as a child. I cold plunge every morning.
Oh. See, I was immediately going to go yes with the 6 a.m. workouts, because if you were an athlete, you have to be disciplined. But I actually know plenty of athletes that when they drop the pads or the cleats, they never stepped in the gym again. But I went to a baseball game with you recently, and I saw you look like you still work out every day at 6 a.m. That's the truth.
Okay, that is true.
Okay. And then cold plunge and hit by a car. I'm going to say you cold plunge, but not every day. Do you cold? So you got hit by a car.
I did. Man. The cold plunge thing, I don't understand these folks, man, because I did it in football and I hated every second of it. I mean, pure misery. I like it. There's nothing about it that I want to do. I'm just like, you know what? I'll find a way to make my life and emotions and, whatever good without cold plunge.
Yeah. No, I get that. I don't understand that either. Like, I like saunas and steam rooms. Like, the heat therapy sounds good to me, not the cold plunge.
And I believe in it. That's fine. I can do that kind of thing. But the cold, no.
I get that. So you were hit by a car when you were a kid?
Was
it serious?
I laugh about it now, but obviously, it was. It was actually pretty wild. It was the day after my 6th birthday, and I was racing my brother home. We lived in a small town in Centerville, and I was racing my brother home, and I took one way, and I'm like riding my fast as I could, and of course I looked to the right, which I was looking for my brother to see if I was beating him, and then the car came from the left and hit me, and I like did a cartwheel.
Wow.
And I'm 6, right? So, I mean, I can laugh about it now, but like my dad was the town doctor, and he got a call up at his office, and someone's like, Doc, come down to Western Auto. The kid's been hit by a car and we think he's dead. So he like rushes up there, sees my older brother like walking off sad with his bike, and it's like, oh my goodness. And he goes up there and sees me and turns into dad. And instead of like bracing the neck, he kind of like scoops me up, and it was a wild event, and I ended up like cracking my skull like an egg, which ultimately, looking back on it, saved my life because my brain was able to swell and then come back, and broke my leg, and I was like in the ICU for a while and in a coma for like 2 days. But I don't know, man. I know that it was tough. I didn't like cross the street for a while. I didn't want to ride in elevators and all that. But, But like I said, I can laugh about it now. But I couldn't imagine being my parents. Right? I was a kid, and whatever. You're relentless as a kid, but my parents, man, it must have just been unbelievably shocking.
Not what any dad wants to do is go to an emergency call and get there and
Especially
find out
as
it's
a
his
doctor.
son. Yeah, as a doctor.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Seth, thank you so much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate it, my friend. Man, what a great interview with Seth McKinney, talking about his disappointments in life, but also the importance of processes. And so I want to leave you with this question. What processes are you dealing with in your life? What small steps are you going to take starting tomorrow to be more successful in the areas that you want to be successful in life? So leave your responses below and email us at info@nograyareas.com. And remember to like, follow, and especially subscribe. We'll see you next time.